Ciao Blender artist and welcome back to my channel. This week we will start modeling the chair and we will set up the basis to create a wonderful render. Let's start. First we need to lock the references, so we add the filter and we select this selectable switch. If we click the selectable switch to deactivate it, in this way we will not be able to select them anymore, and it's gonna be a lot easier for us to model our chair. We go under model because in here we're gonna place our meshes, and we start with the modeling. So in the 3D view we press Shift A and we add a cube. Then we go into ortho view 1 and we move the cube a little bit up, we scale it down a little bit, and we move to the side view because this cube is gonna be this part of our chair. So we can simply press G, and pressing G in this view, the cube will be moving toward the X and toward the Y and Z axis. So it's gonna still be in the center, and we position roughly in the center of this panel. Then we press R and we rotate in order to match more or less this panel. When you rotate an object, I deactivate the toggle X-ray. When you rotate an object, if you try to scale it or move, so let's say that I try to move this cube pressing G and Y, the cube will be moved or scaled among the global axis. But Blender is smart enough to remember what was the original positioning and rotation of the cube. So if you want to scale the cube, like in this case, among this axis, that's basically what is called the local axis, you simply have to press the axis twice. So let's try to scale this cube in order to make it thin. So we press S, then the axis, that's the Y, and we press the axis again, Y, and as you can see there is a green line that allows us to scale the cube among the Y axis, and I start adjusting it. So I keep pressing R to rotate and position it right, then S, Y, Y to scale it a little bit more, and then I want to scale it among the local Z axis, so S, Z, Z to make it a little bit bigger. And that's it. The other thing that we need to do is making the cube in the right size also from the front view. So S, in this case it doesn't really change too much because the X axis didn't change for our cube. So I press X and I scale it down. I noticed that I probably should have positioned this image a little bit more on the left, but we can work with this. What we have to do now is setting up a mirror. There is no point in modeling our object twice because the left and the right side are basically the same. So in order to set up, we need to go into the modifier properties. We add a modifier, and in this case we add mirror. What the mirror does is basically making a copy of the left side of the object into the right side, using in this case the pivot point of the object as a mirroring surface. So what we're gonna do, we enter in edit mode pressing tab, and we enter in edit mode, and as you can see we see our model with vertices and planes, so we can modify every single vertex in this case. We press Ctrl R to add a loop cut. So we add geometry to our mesh, and we press OK. Now, after you pressed the left mouse button, you will notice that you can slide the loop cut. You simply press ESC to leave the loop cut in the center of your object. Then, using the right mouse button or left mouse button if you selected this the first time you installed Blender, you pressing Shift, you select the vertices that you want to delete, and again you press X to delete the vertices. You will not notice much, but what happened, and I show you in edit mode because as I said, the mirror acts in the center where there is the pivot point. If I select everything with all and I move, you will notice that I am actually mirroring on the x-axis the two planes. So I press ESC and then I press Tab again to enter in object mode. Another good thing that you should do is setting the scale. As you can see, the scale is not uniform anymore. We need to make sure that X, Y, and Z are equal to 1. To do that, we press Ctrl A and we apply the scale. You can apply also rotation and position, altering the pivot point of your object. From this moment on, everything we do on the left side of this mesh is going to be mirrored on the right side. We're going to do the same for the other parts of our chair. So we set up this, we press Shift A again, we add a mesh cube, we go into the side view pressing 3, and then we toggle the X-ray mode. We press G to position these where the other part of our chair is. We press R to rotate, and then we start scaling it with S, and of course we scale on the Z axis, so S, Z, Z, and we make it a little bit thinner. Then we can go also closer. We rotate until we match more or less the rotation of this element, and then we scale it a little bit more and we try to match these elements. So we see that it's quite thin. Then scale Y, Y, and we make it a little bit longer. Now we need to move it a little bit forward. Yeah, actually, one good thing that you can do, because as you can see, this part is hidden by this wooden stake. What we have to do, we can change the windows into other windows. To do that, you go into editor type and we press image editor. So this is gonna be our image editor, and we are gonna use what used to be the outliner as a reference window. So we go into new, actually we go into open, we find our image, and here under the chair we import image. So for what I see, this part is gonna be more or less, yes, positioned here. So we just need to scale it up and move it forward. So we move forward pressing G, and then what used to be the y-axis, so YY, and we move slightly forward. And then we scale again on the YY axis, and we have the second part ready. Then we go in the front, and in this case the blue plane is going to be a little bit larger than the back one. So what we have to do in this case, we press S, X, and we make it a little bit larger. After having done that, we deactivate the X-ray and we set up for this plane mirroring again, but I'm gonna show you a different method to do that. We press Tab to enter into the edit mode, then we press Ctrl R to create a loop cut. We delete the left side X and we delete the vertices, and we go into edit mode again. We make sure that the scale is uniform, so Ctrl A, apply scale. Then we select this plane and we select the one that we created before, and as you can see, this one is in light orange. This color means that this is the active element, so the last element you select is gonna be the active element. What we have to do now is applying the scale, what we have to do now is applying the modifier. So we press Ctrl L and we make a link with the modifier. So what does it mean is that this plane took all the modifiers of this one and applied to itself. And we continue to model our chair following the same principle. So we go again in the front and we can probably set up this part. So Shift A, we add a cube, we toggle the X-ray, G, Z, and we move slightly more or less here, and we scale it down. Now, what we want to do now is making this cube thinner, but we want to keep the same width. If you press scale, you can scale the cube normally. But what if you want to remove one of the axes from this procedure? You simply press Shift plus the axis that you want to remove. In this case, we don't want to alter the X. So scale, Shift X, and we can scale it down without altering the X. To make it easier, we can already move on the side view. We grab it and we move more or less where it needs to be. At the end, we can go also closer. We remember that the axis that we don't want to alter is the X, so we press S, Shift X, and we make it smaller. And yes, we are more or less okay. Let's remember to apply the scale, and let's do again what we did before with the other two planes. So we add a loop cut, we delete one of the two parts. In this case, I'm gonna select in a different way. I press B to use the box selection. I drag a box around the vertices I want to select, and then I release the click. Then I press X and I delete the vertices. Then I go back into object mode. I apply the scale, and I did it before. And then I select first plane, Ctrl L, and I apply the modifiers. Now this part is going to be repeated in other parts of our chair. So we go into the side view and we see that there's going to be one here, probably one here, one here, here, and here. So we can easily duplicate an object, selecting it and pressing Shift D, and then moving the duplicate wherever we want. So we know that more or less all these parts have the same length and the same shape. So what we have to do is just positioning them in the right place. So Shift D again, and I create another part. I will probably move a little bit lower because I don't want it to disappear inside, so I don't want it overlap. And then Shift D, but in this case, as you can see, this one on the bottom is gonna be exactly perpendicular to this one. So we just want to move across the Z axis, so we press Z and we move it down. And here again, this one is gonna be on the same height of this one. So Shift D and then Y, because this is the Y axis, and we move it here. And we created all the other parts of our chair. Now what remains are the vertical ones on the left and right, and the part where you put your arms. So again, Shift A, we add a cube, and we can start with the main vertical one. So one, we scale the cube down, we position in the proper place, we can toggle the X-ray, more or less is the right height. I can actually position in the center and scale a little bit down, and then again we want this to be thinner. So in this case we are gonna scale it, but we will remove the Z axis. So scale Shift Z to make it thinner. I need to toggle the X-ray to make you see a little bit better. Then we go with 3 on the side view because this one is gonna be positioned in here. So G, Y, and we position it here. Then again scale Shift Z and we make it a little bit thinner. In this case, if we mirror this object and we use the pivot point of this object as mirror surface, we will not be able to see anything because we want this to appear on the other side. There is a way though. We can apply the scale, so apply the scale, then we select one of the other objects with the mirror and we press Ctrl L to copy the modifier. Nothing happens, but as you can see in the mirror inspector, there is a voice that's called mirror object. If you select one of your central object, the object will act, actually the pivot point of that object will act as mirror surface. We will notice that other parts of the chair have the same orientation and probably the same thickness of this one. So there is no point for us to remodel them or re-adding. They are actually cubes. So we will duplicate them and we will alter the duplicates every time that we will need. So we know that there is another element here and we can see that in here. So we select our object, Shift D, Y to move on the Y axis, and we need to make sure that the bottom part doesn't touch the floor. So we enter into edit mode and we select just the bottom part. In this case we can go into face selection. I am actually showing you different ways to select and move because this can be done in face selection directly and it is easier. I just want to show you that you can use face selection and edge selection that allows you to select the edges of your shapes, and a vertex selection that allows you to select the vertices of your shape. In this case, we go into face selection, then with 3 we grab, so with G, Z, and we move this polygon up, and we have created the second part. Third part is the one in the front, so we go again into edit mode, then 3. We can actually see that this one is gonna touch the floor. Probably it's better if we duplicate this one, Shift D, and Y, because we move across the Y axis, and we place it here. We know that more or less this touches this part of our chair. So we adjust a little bit of them. And that's it. And again, we just need to make this a little bit shorter. So edit mode, or actually edit mode of what we selected. And in this case, I'm gonna use the edge selection. So I select the 4 edges, then I go into 3, G, Z, and I move it up until here. So the last part of our chair are these 2 thicker rectangular shapes. So, well, in this case, I can show you how to alter a shape that you created in a slightly different way. So we can duplicate this one, so Shift D, then we move on the side up a little bit, so G, Z, we move it here, and in this case we are gonna alter this in edit mode. So we enter, we tab in edit mode, I go a little bit in the center, we select the top and bottom face. Actually, this overlaps, so I can use X-ray to select the bottom one. Then I go back to 3. As you can see, I keep swapping across views. Then I press Scale Z, and I make it a little bit shorter. As you can see, when I edit something in edit mode, the pivot point is not affected, so we will have probably to reposition the pivot point in a second moment. But for now, we select the bottom part and not the top part. 3, we go close, and G, Z, and we move more or less in here. Then we can select the top part, again 3, I go on the side view, G, Z, and we position it here. Then we select the side, 3 again, G, Y in this case, and we move back, then the front, 3, G, Y, and we move forward. And then we need to make sure that they become thicker. So we go into the front view, and well, you can select the whole object or all the faces of the object pressing A, and in front you can scale it on the x-axis in this case, and you can make it a little bit thicker. And yeah, our chair is ready. So I exit object mode, and as you can see, when I alter something into edit mode, the scale is not affected. What we can add now is a floor, so we press Shift A and we add a plane. We can scale the plane a little bit up. In this case, we don't really have to apply the scale unless we want to do something with the modifiers on this plane, but for the time being, this is gonna be just the surface where our chair is gonna lie. So we are in a good place now, we have our 3D model, and the next step will be smoothing the edges to create a more realistic look. I hope you will join me to the fourth part of the tutorial. Ciao!